Hi, I'm Ardith. I was supposed to sit at table 3, by the garden, next to my mother. But 5 days before my sister's wedding, my name vanished from the seating chart, from the slideshow, from the family I helped build. They told everyone I was helping with the planning, but the truth is, I wasn't even invited. Then they gave my seat to someone else. And the dress I designed? My sister said it came from Paris. Why would a family go this far to erase one of their own? And why did her billionaire husband decide enough was enough? You ever feel like you're watching your own life get rewritten while you're still living it? The sun slid past my window blinds like it had somewhere better to be. I stood by the door, scanning the street out front, waiting for the mailman like I had every morning that week. Habit had me folding my hands, pressing my knuckles into each other, an old nervous tic I thought I'd outgrown. But here I was again, waiting. Charleston in spring smells like magnolia and memory. I cracked the door open and stepped onto the porch, barefoot. The air was warm, kind even, but I felt a different chill pressing against my chest. When the mail finally arrived, I sifted through envelopes like I was searching for proof I hadn't been forgotten. There was no envelope with a gold seal, no calligraphy, no weight of intentional paper that said, "You belong here." There was no invitation. At first, I told myself maybe it had been delayed. Mail got lost, people made mistakes. But deep down, I knew better. I stood on that porch longer than I should have, letters hanging loose in my fingers, telling myself things I didn't believe. 2 months ago, Callista had called me, voice breezy and efficient like always. "Of course you'll be there," she'd said. "I mean, you're basically part of the design." And she'd laughed. That was it, just that one line. No follow-up, no details. Now I wondered, had she meant it? Or had I, like so many times before, been a prop in her image? By that night, the silence became heavier than the absence of the envelope. I checked again desk drawers, junk piles, even under the car seat, as if I might be misplaced my own belonging. I hadn't. What I lost wasn't paper. It was permission. Later that week, a cousin forwarded me an email thread. "Thought you'd seen this already," she wrote with a smiling emoji. It was the guest list, a PDF attachment, updated with seating arrangements and RSVP statuses. I wasn't there, not even as a maybe. But Zinnia Proudwell was. Front and center, sitting next to my mother. Zinnia who once spilled red wine on Callista's high school yearbook and blamed it on me. Zinnia who posted TikToks about skincare routines, using filters thick enough to rewrite reality. That Zinnia was invited, seated, listed. I wasn't. I didn't reply to the cousin. I closed the email. My stomach folded into itself. Weeks ago, Callista had told me, in her classic faux humble tone, that nothing off the rack fit her southern silhouette. She begged me to help her design something timeless, but not boring. And I did. I sketched for her. We met over coffee. I sourced lace from Asheville and spent late nights tracing beadwork by lamplight. And now, on her social media post, her caption read, "Custom gown by Maison Orléans Paris." A lie. A beautiful, gilded lie. I didn't call her out. Not yet. I screenshotted it, saved it under a folder I titled, "May Forget, Won't Forgive." I remembered what my father used to say. You don't fight a firestorm with your bare hands. You gather water, quietly. That Sunday, I went to brunch. A group of old family friends had gathered. I sat at the end of the table, barely noticed. One leaned toward me, smile stretched too wide. "So sad we won't see you at the wedding. You always bring the color." I smiled. I suppose I've been replaced by more subtle tones. They chuckled, not understanding. I didn't clarify. Back home, I laid my sketchbook on the table, the one with the original drafts of Callista's dress. The pencil lines were soft now, smudged from fingerprints and too many late nights. I didn't open it. Instead, I walked to the bookshelf, pulled down my laptop, and powered it on. A new folder. Title: Receipts. I whispered aloud, not to anyone, but to the walls that had seen it all. If they're going to pretend I wasn't invited, I might as well make my absence unforgettable. That night, I didn't sleep. I drafted a letter that made silence into a sound they couldn't ignore. The words were clinical, calculated, and legally binding. This time, I wasn't playing defense. I didn't send the letter to hurt anyone. I sent it to confirm that I wasn't crazy. Or, worse, forgettable. 5 days before the wedding, I drove to the venue under soft gray skies. It had rained lightly that morning, and the stone walkways still glistened. My heels tapped against them as I made my way inside, past staff I had once directed during the early design phase. No one looked up. I wasn't there to make a scene. I simply wanted to see for myself. Inside, the seating chart stood on an easel wrapped in eucalyptus and baby's breath. I found the Monroe section quickly, my mother, seated next to the bride, of course. My uncle and aunt near the dance floor, cousins, plus ones, neatly labeled, and their table 3. The table I had helped design with light peach linens and brass candle holders. Zinnia Proudwell, right where my name had once been. It wasn't just an oversight, it was a substitution. I wasn't just erased, I was replaced. The drive to my mother's house afterward felt longer than it was. I didn't turn on the radio. Just let the silence fill the gaps where explanations should have been. Dinner that night was supposed to be casual. My mother set the table herself: roasted chicken, cornbread, steamed asparagus. The usual. Callista didn't come. She had bridal things. It was just the two of us. We didn't talk much through the meal. I waited until we were finishing up before I brought it up. "Zinnia's listed at my table," I said, keeping my voice light. Mom blinked. On the chart. The one at the venue. My seat table 3. She took a sip of her iced tea. "That's a mix-up. I'm sure they'll sort it out." "They already did," I replied. "Just not in my favor." She didn't meet my eyes. "Honey, this isn't the time for drama. It's your sister's moment. Let her enjoy it." A sharpness rose in my throat, but I swallowed it. So my role is to make sure she enjoys it, even if that means pretending I don't exist. "Don't twist things, Ardith," she said. "It's just a chair." That was the moment I understood. It was never just a chair. Later that night, I sat in the guest room I'd slept in as a teenager. The same floral quilt, the same creaky window. I remembered family dinners from years past, where I'd been the one asked to refill drinks, run dishes back to the kitchen, clean up afterward. Meanwhile, Callista sat at the head of the table beside Dad, praised for her posture, her poised opinions. Even then, I had a role helper, not honoree. The roles never changed. We just aged into them. At brunch the next morning, a woman I vaguely recognized from one of Callista's networking groups leaned over and said, "So, are you part of the planning team? You're doing such a great job keeping things flowing." I smiled without warmth. "I designed the wedding gown she'll be wearing tomorrow." Her eyes widened. "Oh, I didn't realize you were wow." "That's impressive." She said it was French? "Just inspired by it," I said, sipping my coffee. The moment moved on, but my mind didn't. That evening, we had a small dinner on the back patio. Shrimp and grits, raws. String lights overhead, everyone buzzing. Zinnia showed up late, as always, with an entrance like she was stepping onto a stage. She walked right up to Callista and kissed her on both cheeks. "I couldn't have done this without you," Callista cooed loudly, glass in hand. "You've saved me." Zinnia waved it off with false modesty and slid into the seat right beside Hermie's seat, the one I had picked in the layout I submitted 2 months ago. No one said anything, neither did I. I stared at the wine in my glass. Not because I wanted to drink it, but because it gave me something to hold, something to grip. I lasted another 40 minutes before I excused myself. Back in my apartment that night, I pulled open my sketch folder. The original seating chart still had my name typed at table 3. Submitted, approved, documented. They'd all seen it. They'd all known. I whispered, "You don't get to rewrite this story, Callista. Not all of it. Silence can be louder than shouting, especially when everyone else has agreed not to hear you." The seating chart was still posted in the lobby, and once again, my name was nowhere to be found. I didn't bother standing in front of it this time. I simply kept walking past the gold-rimmed glass doors, past the scent of gardenias someone overused near the entry, and toward the far end of the ballroom where the AV techs were setting up. I came early that morning with a printed copy of the original mood board tucked in my bag, the one I had built months ago when I was still naive enough to believe I had a seat at the table, at least on paper. The coordinator, a young woman in a black headset I hadn't met before, glanced at me with a distracted nod and said, "You can start organizing the left side tables. We need the chargers lined up evenly." I blinked, then looked down to see a clipboard being handed to me by one of the junior staffers. She assumed I was crew, a vendor, someone disposable. I took it, smiled, said nothing. If being mistaken for staff was how they intended to box me out, I'd play along for now, because some erasures are more revealing when left untouched. Inside the reception hall, the lights were dimmed as the projector flickered on. It was time to preview the memory reel for rehearsal dinner. I stood near the back wall, blending into the shadows, watching the opening montage unfold. Baby Callista giggling in a bubble bath. Callista dressed as Dorothy in a school play. Callista crowned prom queen, smiling under lights. Callista in her first sorority formal. The reel continued, decade by decade, milestone by milestone. I kept waiting for a group photo, a family vacation shot, maybe a blurry frame of me in the corner, laughing too loud or helping Dad light the grill. Something, anything. But there was nothing. No 8th grade recital, no beach trip, no me. You can crop a person out of a photo, I thought, but erasing someone from history? That takes effort. As the slideshow ended, polite applause rose from the group of planners and assistants gathered around. The lights slowly returned. One of the women, clipboard tucked under her arm, turned to me with a friendly smile. "Were you hoping to be included in the reel?" she asked casually. It was curated by Callista's social media team. Super tight on time. I smiled back. No worries. I'm just observing. But under the table, my hand was trembling as I typed a note in my phone. Visual proof of exclusion complete. Confirm source of slideshow. I didn't stay long after that. As they tested lights for the stage area, one of the younger vendors approached me while adjusting centerpieces. "You've got an eye," he said cheerfully. "Are you with logistics or catering?" I looked him dead in the eye. "I'm the one who designed the dress your client will wear to walk into forever." He froze. "Oh, wow." I didn't mean to. I waved it off. "You're fine. Happens all the time." And it did. Because when someone decides your background, the world follows suit. That evening, back at my apartment, I poured myself a glass of wine I didn't really want and sat on the edge of my bed. My phone buzzed with a voice memo from Mallory, an old colleague who now freelanced in PR. She had done a few side gigs for Callista over the years, always staying neutral. "Hey, I know this might be weird," her voice whispered in the recording, "but I was on one of the internal threads. I don't think your name was ever supposed to be in the visuals. Everything got filtered. I just thought you should know." I replayed it. Once. Twice. Not because I didn't believe her, because I did, but because I wanted to hear what the lie sounded like when someone else said it out loud. Later, I lay back on my pillow and stared at the ceiling, the slideshow looping in my mind. But this time, I didn't search for myself in the pictures. I studied the spaces instead. The gaps, the edits, the empty corners where I should have been. Fine. If they were going to pretend I wasn't part of the story, I'd make sure they remembered the silence I left behind. Silence can only protect people for so long, until it exposes them instead. The seating arrangement said photographer, but I knew that chair used to have my name. I didn't even flinch anymore. When enough things are taken from you, you start cataloging the losses like weather expected, recorded, endured. I returned to the venue 3 days before the ceremony, just after lunch. It was supposed to be a quiet trip. I had left my original mood board in the back prep area during the tech run earlier that week, and I wanted to retrieve it before it ended up in a trash bin with cocktail napkins. The staff entrance was open. I stepped inside, nodding to a florist I recognized. I made it 3 steps past the storage racks before a new security guard intercepted me. "Excuse me, Mom," he said gently but firmly. "This area is restricted to listed vendors and bridal party staff. May I have your name?" "Ardith Monroe." He tapped something into his tablet, waited, then shook his head. "I'm sorry, you're not cleared for this section." I laughed once. Short, hollow. "I am not a vendor," I said. "I am the person who designed half of what's in that ballroom." He didn't know what to say. It wasn't his fault. Still, I turned and walked out the way I came. Outside, the sun hit me like a spotlight I hadn't asked for. Before I reached my car, Callista's voice cut through the air. "You can't just go where you please," she said. "Not harsh, just cold." I stopped walking. "I was collecting my materials," I answered, "on the off chance you hadn't shredded them." She walked toward me with that step-perfect stride she always used at fundraisers. "It's just better this way," she said softly. "You show up, you smile. You sit where you're told. No extra confusion." "I'm not the confusion," I replied. "I designed your wedding's aesthetic, Callista. Your Pinterest board doesn't exist without me. I'm not in the way. You're rewriting the room to erase me." She smiled, glossy and fake, then leaned in as if to comfort me. Her voice dropped into a whisper. "Don't make this about you. You always do." That night, I sat at the back of the welcome night dinner, away from the lanterns and laughter. The space buzzed with clinks of glasses and shallow compliments. My mother waved at me from across the tent, but didn't invite me over. Midway through the evening, Callista stood beside a covered easel. "Before we wrap, there's something I want to share," she said. "A special gift from Thatcher. One ill treasure for years." She pulled the cloth away, revealing a custom-framed calligraphy piece of poem we both adored since childhood, inked in gold leaf on handmade paper. My stomach dropped. I recognized the piece immediately. My mother and I had commissioned it together, a wedding gift from the two of us. I had sourced the paper. Mom had chosen the font. Wed split the cost. A guest beside me leaned in, whispering, "It's stunning." Callista smiled like she'd won an award. "Thatcher surprised me with it," she said. "So tasteful, right?" I looked at my mother across the room. She met my gaze for half a second, then looked away. After dinner, I found Callista behind the reception tent, pretending to check her phone. "Callista," I said. She didn't look up. "If this is about the poem, save it. You had your moment." "You're right," I said. "This is about the poem, and the seating chart, and the mood board, and every damn time you've spun the truth until it broke." She sighed. "Oh, Ardith. You think I'm out to get you?" "No," I said calmly. "I think you're out to curate the version of me that makes you feel safest." She rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic." I took a step closer. "If you keep rewriting the truth," I said, "I'll start publishing mine." She smirked. "You wouldn't. You like being liked too much." I leaned in, my voice ice cold. "Try me." Later that night, I sat at my desk with a glass of water and every receipt I could find, digital or otherwise. I didn't do it out of spite. I wasn't looking for a fight. I just wanted my name to stop disappearing. I opened a new folder on my desktop and called it The Record. Inside, I began dropping files-dated sketches, email threads, original invoices, photo logs. Every piece of truth I had kept quiet, neatly archived. No headlines, no warnings, just evidence. The more you try to erase someone, the louder their absence becomes. The seating chart had changed again, but this time, I wasn't the only one who noticed. It wasn't a whisper inside my head anymore. It was showing up in places I hadn't even stepped. I went to the Greaves estate in the late afternoon. A quiet visit. Nothing dramatic. Just a folder I'd lent to Callista's Planera, set of fabric swatches and lighting notes that still had my handwriting on the back cover. I wanted it back before it magically became hers. The sun was low when I parked by the side entrance. Marlon, Thatcher's longtime driver, was standing by the valet check-in, clipboard in hand, tapping a pen on his palm. When he saw me, his eyes lit up. "Miss Monroe?" He nodded. "Didn't expect to see you here this early." "Didn't expect to be here this late?" I replied with a smile. He tilted his head. "Just out of curiosity." "Did they ever confirm your seating?" I paused. "Why do you ask?" Marlon scratched the back of his neck. Mr. Greaves was real specific. Said table 3, next to the garden. Your name was printed. Even made a note about your wine Pinot Noir, I think. I felt my pulse skip, but my expression didn't shift. "You're sure?" "Positive," he said. I set the card myself. I didn't know what to say. So I nodded, thanked him, and walked inside like I wasn't unraveling. It was no longer just family politics, no longer just Callista's need for control. There was intent behind this now, a decision made, and hidden. Not just from me, but maybe from Thatcher too. I didn't want to believe he was playing both sides. But if he wasn't, then someone was lying to someone. I grabbed my portfolio and drove home in silence. That night, my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen in a while: Rachel, a freelance coordinator I'd mentored years ago. I swiped open her voice message, still wearing the jacket I hadn't bothered to take off. "Hey, Ardith. I wasn't sure if I should send this, but I think you need to hear it." A pause. Then Callista's voice clear, sharp, dismissive. "Just don't send her the invite again. It's simpler. She'll make it dramatic." Click. Rachel's voice followed, soft and apologetic. "I didn't want to get involved, but you deserve to know." I sat still for a long time. The air in the room felt thinner than usual. My walls looked too white, my hands too steady. Then, without a word, I opened my laptop. Folder, the record. Subfolder, audio. File name, invite redacted.que. I added it. No caption, just time-stamped evidence. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need a crowd. I just needed to be undeniable. I sorted through the rest of the file: screenshots, invoices, mood board drafts, seating chart PDFs, each one neatly renamed. Original Design 1. Seating Assignment V1. Vendor Timeline Thatcher.pdf. They wanted quiet. It'd give them silence laced with proof. An hour later, I opened a blank email window. 2. Callista Verlaine, CC. Thatcher Greaves. Subject: Notice body. I have heard the recording. If this behavior continues, I will make everything public. This is your one warning. I didn't reread it. I hit send. 10 minutes later, a reply. From Thatcher. "I'll handle it." The more I backed away, the more they believed I had no claws. That was their mistake. The seating assignment said photographer, but they were the ones out of focus now. The aisle was decorated with perfection, but the silence walking down it would say more than any vow. I hadn't intended to return to the seating list, but that morning I received an email that forced my hand. It was a mistake, the kind that only happens when people stop being careful. A vendor CC'd me by accident on an update intended for the florist. The attachment was innocuous at first glance, a spreadsheet with final RSVPs and seating. But when I opened the document, I stopped breathing halfway down the page. There it was. Monroe, Ardith crossed out in pen. A clean line through the name. Below it, in a different hand, Proudwell, Zinnia scribbled in. No notes. No explanation. Just replacement. Like it was routine. Like I hadn't designed the layout myself. I stared at the screen. No rage. Just stillness. That peculiar kind of calm that only surfaces when the damage is past fixing. That afternoon, I drove to the venue again. The sky hung low, overcast but dry. No excuses from the weather to soften anything. I slipped in through the back, made my way to the ballroom. I told the staff I was checking the uplighting. No one questioned me. I approached the long table by the glass doors, the one with the brass fixtures and velvet napkins. Table 3. The chair closest to the garden path had a small white card on it, delicately printed. It read, "Photographer." I nearly laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was bold. As if even the ghost of my presence had to be reassigned to someone easier to forget. Behind me, someone cleared their throat. I didn't need to turn around. I already knew the voice. "Oh, you're here," Zinnia said lightly, like it was a casual drop-by. "Didn't expect to run into you today." "Neither did I," replied, still looking at the card. I took out my phone, snapped a photo. "You checking lighting again?" "No," I said. "Just documenting what's real before it gets rewritten again." She chuckled. "You know, you always had such a dramatic flair. And you always had such a talent for stepping into shoes you didn't earn." I didn't say it out loud. That evening, at the rehearsal dinner, the MC stood with a microphone in hand, reading from a printed list. He thanked the vendors, the bridal party, even the security team. Then he paused. "And a special thanks to Ardith Monroe for early concept design support." I closed my eyes. The mispronunciation stung sharper than it should have. I was the one who trained him. I had taught him how to pronounce names with accents, how to honor them with care. And now, mine had been mangled in front of 100 people like I was a footnote. No one corrected him. I didn't bother either. After dessert, I excused myself, walked outside, and stood under a string of fairy lights near the catering van. The night buzzed with laughter behind me, but all I heard was the hum of a boundary being crossed for the last time. Back home, I didn't cry. I didn't even curse. I opened the record. The folder was already filling. I added the email with my name crossed out, the photo of the chair labeled photographer, the audio clip from the dinner, the mispronounced name. I labeled it Truth Vault. Then I composed a short message. To Callista BCC. Thatcher. Subject. Public version pending. Message. One more public misstep, and I'll make this archive visible to everyone you care about impressing. No signature, no flourish. I hit send. I didn't check for a response. Instead, I brewed tea and sat by the window. The night outside was quiet, but my chest no longer was. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel erased. I didn't feel angry either. I felt precise. You don't need to scream to be heard. You just need timing. They kept pushing, so I stopped being soft. The aisle was no longer a place for ceremony. It had become a stage for reckoning. I stood beneath the shade of an oak tree while guests arrived in waves, smiling and humming into each other's cheekbones. No one looked my way. That had become the pattern. I was adjusting a cluster of flower stems in a copper vase, not because it was my job anymore, but because crooked tulips made me itch. Thatcher's voice reached me before I saw him. "I had a table reserved for you," he said, low but direct. Table 3, Garden View. I didn't turn away from the centerpiece. It was overwritten. He was silent for a beat, then tapped at his phone. "I'll fix it." I didn't stop him, but I didn't thank him either. Some things don't warrant gratitude. Inside, I walked past the new seating chart posted at the reception entrance. Table 3, left column, middle row, Zeed Proudwell, just below Thatcher's name. My stomach tightened. I stepped closer, following the line of names like a blood trail. The font was elegant, the ink black. My name was nowhere. I moved toward the actual table, already dressed for guest gold chargers, folded napkins, a small bouquet of garden roses, exact to spec. The place card once printed with my name now bore Zinnia's. I took out my phone and captured the image. Then, I uploaded it to the record. The sun had started its descent when I heard a small voice behind me. "Why aren't you wearing the same dress as everyone else?" A little girl, no more than 8, dressed in a pink tulle gown, stood by my side. She was one of the flower girls. I knelt beside her. "Because sometimes grown-ups forget who helped plan the party," I said, my voice gentle. She scrunched her nose. "But you're here now, right?" I smiled. "That's what matters." Inside, my chest ached from the kindness of her question. Cocktail hour arrived with clinking glasses and high heels on cobblestone. I lingered near the back edge of the reception area, watching the swirl of curated joy. Then came the voice that broke it all open. Wasn't Ardith supposed to be at table 3? Judge Emery Kane, my late father's closest friend. His voice, steady and loud enough to carry. The conversations around him froze mid-sentence. I didn't move. Zinnia sipped her drink like she hadn't heard. Callista smiled like she'd rehearsed it. I stepped forward, slow and deliberate, and stood by the judge's side. Apparently, I said, that seat had a prettier name. Then I walked away. As I passed the edge of the dance floor, Thatcher entered through the side gate. His suit was dark gray, his eyes locked on the place card. He didn't say a word. He walked straight to the table, pulled the card off the charger, folded it in half, and placed it in his jacket pocket. No one stopped him. The sun dipped lower, lights turned on. A violinist began tuning by the arbor. An usher called for guests to take their seats. I didn't move toward the chairs. I waited by the edge of the archway, where the flowers curved over white draping and fake perfection. When I checked again, my name wasn't on the overflow list either. My chair had been accidentally omitted altogether. I didn't argue. Instead, I walked down the side path toward the back of the garden, away from the curated centerpieces and assigned smiles. I found a bench where I could see the entire ceremony. I pulled out my phone and opened the record one more time. Then I set it down beside me, locked. You can't delete a presence. You can only hope no one notices it's missing. The man she married knew what silence looked like. Tonight, he was going to make them hear it. I didn't need a microphone. The truth was loud enough when spoken in the right room. It just needed the right question to let it breathe. The chairs rustled quietly as guests settled into their assigned seats. I remained near the back, beneath the canopy of wisteria, invisible but present. The music had started soft strings, carefully curated, but it was Judge Emery Kane's voice that carried. "Where's the youngest Monroe?" he asked aloud, his voice aged but unwavering. "I don't see Ardith anywhere." The music faltered for half a second. Heads turned, expressions shifted. Some feigned distraction. Others looked right at me, then looked away. Callista, standing by the aisle in her pristine dress, plastered on a smile as practiced as any pageant queen's. "Oh, she's probably helping with something," she replied. "Too sweet, too fast." I didn't move. I didn't need to. The silence rippled wider than her answer. Later, as guests made their way to the reception tables, Thatcher walked toward table 3. I watched from a distance. He stared at the name cards before reaching down and plucking one off the charger plate. "Reserved for photographer," it read. He flipped it over. My name was faint, nearly erased, but not quite gone. He folded the card once, slowly, and slid it into his inner jacket pocket. Then he looked up at Callista, who stood 10 feet away, watching. Fixing this," he said, then walked off. He didn't shout. He didn't explain. He didn't need to. The reception began under amber lights strung between oak trees. Champagne flowed. Conversations resumed. Callista floated through the room with a glass in hand, laughing when people expected her to, pretending she hadn't heard what everyone else just had. Then came the toast. Thatcher stood at the head of the garden, glass in hand. The crowd hushed. "Tonight," he said, "we celebrate beginnings. But I also want to acknowledge those who laid the foundation for what made this day beautiful. The designers, the planners, and the quiet architects whose names may not appear on the program, but whose fingerprints are everywhere." He didn't say my name. He didn't need to. Callista's face stayed still, but her knuckles whitened around the stem of her glass. She glanced toward Zinnia, who offered nothing but a stiff smile and a quick excuse to leave the table. The timing wasn't lost on anyone. I remained where I had been all along, on the edge of the moment, watching it tip. My phone buzzed lightly in my palm. A reminder had set 2 days ago. I opened the record. 1 click. Upload initiated. The file synced to a private cloud. A scheduled post set for Monday morning, unless paused manually. If public denial continues, this goes live. That was the title. I drafted a message to Thatcher. Thank you for seeing what they all refuse to. Sent. I locked my phone, slipped it into my bag, and looked up to find the DJ approaching. Ms. Monroe, he said with a smile. Would you like to say a few words? It's open mic. I shook my head. Instead, I stood, lifted my glass. No one was watching. Not really. But one by one, they followed. The music faded. The crowd hushed. I raised my glass slightly higher. This isn't revenge, I said softly, to the space between us. This is remembering out loud. They heard me, every single one of them. That night, the room dimmed, but something in me lit up and stayed burning. There was no press conference, no headline, no grand public reckoning, just a quiet shift in the way people looked at Mayor did the next morning. The silence said more than any apology ever could. I woke up to soft light pooling across my sheets, the kind of stillness that didn't feel empty, just earned. My phone buzzed quietly from across the room, alive with missed calls, unread texts, and a blinking voicemail icon. I didn't touch it. Not out of defiance, but because there was nothing more it could tell me. Not today. I brewed my coffee like it was an act of restoration. No rush, no distractions. The scent filled the room as I sat near the window and let one memory play on repeat. Judge Kane, rising slowly in his gray suit, pausing before speaking. Where's the youngest Monroe? He didn't have to say anything else. That single question cracked the entire story open, not just to the courtroom, but to everyone watching. One question, and finally, someone asked it out loud. I logged into my inbox out of habit, not expectation. Amid junk and meaningless replies, one subject line stood alone. From Thatcher Greaves subject, vendor review initiated. I've initiated a review of all vendor edits. You won't be erased again. No fanfare, no emotion, just fact. I didn't write back. I just closed the laptop and let the weight of those words sink in. They weren't everything, but they were a beginning. Around mid-morning, a soft knock pulled me from my thoughts. When I opened the door, Zinnia stood there. She wore oversized sunglasses and held a small flash drive like it might burn her fingers. I won't stay, she said before I could speak. I knew that seat wasn't mine, but I didn't know how to get out of it without making everything worse. I didn't answer. I simply stepped aside and let her in. She didn't touch the coffee I'd made. She didn't ramble or offer neatly rehearsed lines. Just sat for a moment, holding the flash drive like it was heavier than it looked. This is for your file, she said finally. Her voice was quieter than I'd ever heard it. None of the usual polish. None of the frost. Just honesty, raw and unfinished. I didn't ask what was on it. I didn't have to. When she left, she didn't hug me. She just paused at the door and nodded, then walked down the steps and out of sight. That afternoon, I drove to my mother's house. It was exactly the same, porch swept, curtains drawn, roses trimmed. But I wasn't the same, and that changed everything. She opened the door without a word and let me in. We sat across from each other in the living room where so many facades had been staged. But this time, no one reached for a teacup. No one forced a smile. She broke the silence first. You looked like your father yesterday. I didn't blink. He hated injustice, even when it came dressed in pearls and good manners. I stared at her. He never would have let them erase me. She didn't deny it. She didn't argue. She just looked down at her folded hands. Her silence was an admission she couldn't bring herself to voice. That night, back home, I opened the folder labeled The Record. I clicked through every file, the guest list, the receipts, the audio recordings, even the seating charts. My name struck through in red. Deleted. Replaced. Rewritten. Like I was a typo in their fairy tale. But I didn't cry. And I didn't hit publish either. Instead, I created a new folder on my desktop. I called it Closure. Inside, I saved only one document, a plain text file named I Was There. No manifesto, no legal arguments, just a quiet truth I needed to keep close. Encrypted. Password protected. Not to share, but to remember. At twilight, I returned to the venue. The garden was empty now. No guests, no lights. Just the quiet sound of cleanup, the rustle of linens, the clink of glassware stacked for washing, the last breath of a celebration that had erased me. I walked to table 3. It hadn't been cleared yet. From my purse, I took out the name card I had printed weeks ago, the one they never used. My name in soft cursive, printed on ivory cardstock. I placed it on the linen, right where it should have been from the start. Then I sat, just for a minute, not to cause a scene, not for revenge, just to reclaim something they tried to take. I pulled out my phone and snapped one photo, not for social media, not for evidence, just for me. As I stood to leave, I whispered to the still air, "They might forget, but I won't. And I won't let them do this to the next woman who dared to exist without their permission." And then I walked away, not broken, not erased, but fully, finally present.